So let's go to the second story. The second story, of course, is the story about Moses and his attendant meeting up with a mysterious creature or a mysterious being. The name of this being is not mentioned in this chapter, but Muslims have often speculated and have applied the name of Khidr, or the green one, or the evergreen one, to this particular being that Moses and his attendant encounter. And it's a story of deep wisdom. It's a story of divine wisdom. But let's listen to the story, and then I will offer you my understanding.
On occasion, Moses said to his attendant, "I will not rest until I reach the place where the two seas meet, even if it takes me years." By the time they reached the meeting place of the two oceans, they had forgotten about their fish, which meanwhile found its way back into the sea. After traveling on for a further distance, Moses said to his attendant, "Let us enjoy our meal now. We are both exhausted by the journey." His attendant replied, "Remember the rock we rested by a while back? Well, I forgot the fish there. The devil made me forget to mention this, and how that fish amazingly found its way back to the sea." He responded, "That is what we were after." So they returned, retracing their footsteps. There they discovered a special being commissioned by us, one on whom we bestowed from our domain a special gift, one whom we taught knowledge from our domain. Moses said to the special being, "May I follow you so that you can teach me some of the divine wisdom you have been taught?" The special being said, "You lack the patience to bear such knowledge as I do." "How will you bear knowledge unfathomable to you?" he said. "You will find me, with God's permission, to be resilient. I will not dispute you on the matter." The special being said, "When you are going to accompany me, do not question me concerning anything until I myself have discussed with you the lesson." So they set off until, after traveling by boat, the being made a hole in it. Moses exclaimed, "Did you make a hole in it to drown its people? What a mean act you have committed." He responded, "Did I not tell you that you lack the patience to bear such knowledge as I do?" Moses said, "Do not take me to task for my forgetting, and do not be hard upon me." So they set off again until they came upon a boy, whereat the special being took the boy's life. Moses said, "Did you take the life of an innocent soul, without him having slain anyone? What an horrific act you have committed." He responded, "Did I not tell you that you lack the patience to bear such knowledge as I do?" He added, "If you question me about another thing after this, our association will end, for I shall not excuse you after this." So they set off again until they met with folk in a town. They requested food from the townsfolk, but the folk denied them any hospitality. In the town they found a wall which was about to collapse, so the special being rebuilt it. Moses remarked, "You should have demanded payment for rebuilding this wall." He answered, "This is where you and I shall part. I will share with you the meaning of that over which you could not maintain patience. As for the boat, it belonged to some poor people who work on the sea. My intention was to make it defective because there was behind them a king viciously confiscating all the boats. As for the boy, his two parents enjoyed a secure and calm life, and we anticipated that he would ravage them with insolence and ingratitude. So we wanted their Lord to, in exchange, grant them a more refined son, and one who would be more kind to them. As for the wall, it belonged to two orphaned boys in that town. Beneath it lay a treasure belonging to the two boys. Their father had been a righteous man. In consideration of this, your Lord desired that they should first come of age before people discovered the treasure. What I did was not for my own sake, therefore. This is the meaning of what you lacked the patience to bear."
One should not understand the mysterious being as being a man. He is obviously an executioner of the divine will. He is an executioner of the dictates of God. And when we read in the Qur'an, it takes the life of a young man. What is meant is that providence takes the life of a young man. We know that young men do die, motor vehicle accidents, drug overdose. In this particular instance, and not of course in all instances, I'm not saying that every time a young man unfortunately and tragically loses his life, that it is for this reason. But in this particular case, the reason was that this young man had it in his future to have become an extremely cumbersome and distressful child to his parents. And the amount of heartache and pain and suffering that those two parents were going to experience was only known to God. You see, only known to God the future that would lie ahead. And of course, this young man would also suffer the consequences of such a life. And of course, we are touching on the ideas of, is God creating the future or is God knowledgeable of the future? Of course, from a rationalist perspective, the way we understand it is that God has knowledge of the future, but we shape that future. God is able to intervene in those futures. So if a future is going to be extremely terrible, hard on the parents, then God may opt to intervene to change that future. And I know it's a tough thing to understand, because is it unfair? Is it fair? You know, what about the boy that did live and did cause hardship and sorrow to his parents? I think these are the questions that are very mysterious questions that are very difficult to understand and to explain. But suffice it to say that things do not make sense often when studied in isolation. But events and the dictates of God do make sense when studied in its greater context. So those parents, there might be a reason why they particularly had to be safeguarded from such a troublesome home. And so the way that the universe unfolds is not confined to an individual story, but one should, within divine wisdom, there is of course consideration for much broader realities than just that boy and these two parents. The other two stories are of course much more understandable, like the one where you would initially first think or blame the man for scuppering the boat, and by actually damaging the boat, he saves the boat. And then of course the last incident or event where he still goes and does a free service by rebuilding a wall. So one must understand the wisdom, the divine wisdom, that sometimes you might think that God is blessing them, but God is actually blessing somebody else through them. And the fact that the wall was rebuilt for these people, it wasn't really a favor for them. It was a favor for those orphans. So what we're seeing is that hardship could be to your benefit, or blessings on your enemy are not necessarily to the benefit of your enemy. So those are the lessons, very, very powerful lessons in that story of Moses with the wise servant of God.